understand that there are the other schools.
Oh yeah.
And the importance of going to a sister school.
Okay, good. Yeah, because you went to Army Land?
Yes.
Okay, good. We should talk about that.
You went to Army Land?
Welcome to the Humorless Lot podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only. We do not represent the U.S. Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the U.S. government, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. As the hosts of this podcast, we also understand the risk we are undertaking by expressing our opinions, but we do so for the betterment of our 0402 community. If you have any concerns about anything you hear, please contact the producer listed in the podcast description. We hope you enjoy the show and that you'll look into our other community tools on Facebook, Discord, and Teams. Thanks for being here. Semper Fidelis.
Welcome back to the Humorless Lot. This is episode 9, Back in the Saddle, Professional Military Education. In this episode, Jess and I catch up a bit and give excuses as to why we haven't put forth any fresh content in 4 months. And we provide our perspectives on PME and what we've experienced over our time in the Marines. With regards to PME, everyone's experience will vary. So if you had a different experience, you have more to offer, please feel free to comment and post to one of our communities on Facebook, Discord, or Teams. Or if you'd like to do a separate deep dive episode on what you experience, let's do a separate podcast. Remember, each one of these episodes are meant to help Marines that find him or herself looking for a starting point as they get assigned to a, quote, new experience in the Marine Corps, whether that be a billet, an exercise, or an operation. We can learn from each other's experiences and do better to support, fight, and win. We have some exciting episodes coming up, and we're looking forward to getting them produced. And we look forward, as always, to hearing your feedback. We'll see you on the lot.
Okay, so this episode is mostly a back in the saddle, us like reacquainting ourselves, dusting off my personal computer here, who has been neglected for at least 4 months as I broke open my Nipper computer for the first time, being back from the Joint Staff, and realized, I had like 400,000 emails that I needed to go through. So this will be just kind of an update as to where we are, and then we'll talk a little bit about professional military education from our 2 perspectives, and just kind of visit, what you and I have experienced so far as, I don't know what we would consider ourselves, mid-grade officers, mid-grade 0402s. That's like what we are, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk through that experience. You and I have a couple like varying experiences. You're motivated, woke up at 05. I am dragging myself at 2300 Hawaiian time, which is good. It has been difficult to align schedules, which is good. These need to happen, and I'm happy that we're getting back to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do a little update on me, and then we'll jump back to you and see what's happening on that side of the world. So since our kind of last podcast, like the last episode I just did like a quick Association of Marine Corps Logisticians podcast, because they had their symposium happening, and I wanted to get an episode out to like let everybody know that was happening, and show support for them. And since then, and since a little bit before that, I showed up at 3rd Marine Littoral Regiment, sort of the one Littoral Regiment in the Marine Corps, because 12th technically just stood up. They're starting to get their feet under them out in Okinawa and get situated, but 3rd is definitely the most situated now, having stood up in March of 23. So I showed up in the summertime after a lot of prep work from my predecessor. The whole team that did that turnover did a great job. It's been, building the plane as it's flying, and learning all the bits and pieces of how a littoral regiment, which has never existed before, right, in its current form, is supposed to work. And it's been fascinating, just as expected, as I sat in the Joint Staff for a couple of years, staring down at the Pacific and being like, that'd be really cool to be part of the Littoral Regiment and kind of figure that out. That's exactly how I ended up here. It's having conversations with my predecessor, and then I guess trying to convince the right people to come out here and trust me to be here as logistics officer. So I am the regimental logistics officer. I've got an awesome team of folks in the regimental S4 that I work with. And then I've got the 3 battalions. We've got Littoral Anti-Air Battalion, which is a new thing for the Marine Corps, right? You've got the Littoral Combat Team, which is a modification of our traditional infantry battalion. And then you've got Littoral Logistics Battalion, which is a modification of a Combat Logistics Battalion. Combat Logistics Battalion 3 turned into them. And that is a whole episode in itself. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened over the past 4 months of us trying to figure out how logistics happens at the tactical level with, between the regiment and the LLB. It's a weird, complex relationship of how things get task organized. I guess it's like the easiest way to put it, like us trying to figure out how units are composited, how different capabilities are employed throughout where we're operating, how we're getting from place to place. I mean, we are looking at, TM EABO version 3, trying to figure out what that next section in the logistics chapter is, because there's a lot to be wanted there as to how we employ ourselves. And I think like just the three big things that I came into this job with, because I think what I'm always worried about, or what I've always observed, I guess, as a logistics officer, is it's really easy to just get caught up in the day-to-day, everyday operations and the tasks and the things that you got to do, or else somebody's yelling at you or somebody's standing on your desk. There's a few Marines in the Marine Corps that will appreciate the trunk monkey and him on your desk yelling at you. There's a few Marines that will appreciate that. Anyway, I blacked out there for a minute. So yes, the day-to-day operations. There was 3 things that I came into the job, and I wrote a mini manifesto for myself of hey, I got to keep my eye on the prize of here are the 3 things I wanted to do, and we're making good progress on. So the first thing was plugging into existing joint, host nation, and combined logistics infrastructure. So from a logistics standpoint, stop reinventing the wheel, stop coming up with totally new ideas and saying yes, we can figure all of this out on our own, by ourselves, in our own war game. There is so much work happening throughout the entire joint force and around the world with all of our allies and partners. They're all trying to solve similar problems. And if we can just tap into a little bit of what's already happening out there, I can already see some really good stuff happening with going down that line of effort. The second was bringing concepts of employment for unmanned surface vehicles and unmanned aerial systems into play, and trying to figure out how we use that in the logistics battle space. There are some good projects at the Warfighting Lab, et cetera, that are really trying to get after it, but hand that stuff to me at the tactical level in exercise, and let's get this thing really figured out in a theater, in the environment where we want to use that stuff. So that was another thing that I'm trying to harness, and again, making some really good progress, getting systems in Marines' hands and starting to move stuff across waterways, especially considering we're a littoral regiment. And then the third thing was talking through communications infrastructure. How do I do log stats in a DDIL, denied, degraded, intermittent latency environment? Is that what DDIL stands for? I might have to edit that out because that probably isn't right. But there's no commas listening, so they won't. Yeah, it's too bad, but that's somewhere in there. In an environment where it's very difficult to communicate, right? Again, it's been cool seeing all the progress happening there. There's different systems that are getting put into logisticians' hands to be able to communicate. We just wrapped up force design integration exercise where we tested a couple systems and seeing some cool feedback. We'll see how it goes. So all that stuff is kind of a like an update on where I'm at, where my mind's at. My Marines are exhausted, trying to figure out how to composite this thing together, and all the regiment's logos. I often am making references to Megazord and like all the pieces of the Power Rangers coming together and like creating this one thing. I don't know which Ranger I am. I hope I'm the Green Ranger, but I'm probably the Pink Ranger, to be honest. So, yeah. All right. There's the Littoral Regiment. What's happening in soft world?
No, I was about to say, Kevin, pink's a good color on you, so Pink Ranger it is.
I'll take it.
So let's see, graduated this last summer in June from SAW, took a extended period of leave after doing 2 years of school back to back. Highly recommend that. What's unique about MARSOC is, I believe about 3 years ago, what they did is they combined their G8 and their G5 into a CDNI. Now that gets confusing because we are not a traditional CDNI in the sense that Big Marine Corps has their CDNI. So it does get a little confusing when TMT taskers come down and people just immediately shove them over to CDNI, not realizing that maybe they need to go to the G7 because they're the ones doing training, doctrine, and policy. So we do work on obviously policy and plans, and our big effort right now is concepts. And for 2 years ago, we came out with our first operating concept. It's called Strategic Shaping and Reconnaissance. Highly recommend you guys look into it if you have a minute. And actually, there will probably be a reference to it in the Marine Corps Gazette in January because that is the MARSOC edition. So be on the lookout for that. Little plug there. And overall, what I am doing there right now as their plans officer is helping them, helping the general and his staff navigate not only how we contribute to O plans, that's the overarching thing, but also operating concepts for the future and how we need to see ourselves as a force. And if this doesn't sound a little similar to Big Marine Corps, well, it's exactly what we're doing right now. So it's a very exciting time. What is unique about my position being at the component level, because of the amount of continuity that's needed, it is me and one other uniformed member right now, a master sergeant, and a staff of 10. I have 3 contractors and 4 civilians. And if that comes out to 10, then that's right. If it doesn't, I really suck at math, which is a problem. But that just gives you a little bit of insight into how it's different being a planner probably at a component, or if you were to go to a GCC versus an MSC or the MEF, you're going to have a lot more uniform folks there than you will than where I'm at right now. So I think blessed in that way because I get a different perspective. Actually, 3 of my staff members are retired logisticians, which is fascinating because that just goes to show that we are really good at solving problems, or at least we think we are. And we like to still tackle the hard stuff even in retirement. But it also gives you a bigger picture of how you feed in. And in MARSOC in particular, the 2 different lines of effort, we basically have 2 stepdads. You've got Big Marine Corps and you've got SOCOM. So being able to look at what the needs are from both of those environments and make sure that we are meeting both requirements is a challenge, but it's really good work. So that is what I am doing at MARSOC right now.
It's fascinating. It's similar. The challenges of having consistency versus, I don't know what the right word is, curmudgeonism, latency. Because I saw it on the joint staff as well, and concepts in the joint staff. It's, you want to have consistency. You want to have somebody there. They can say, listen, we tried this 10 years ago. It doesn't work. We shouldn't do that. But then you also have the people there that are saying, hey, we tried this 10 years ago. Information warfare is not a thing. Data analysis is not a thing. Change is not a thing. And you're fighting it. So like how you could be fighting it or you could not be fighting it. It depends on, who is leading the planning, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds challenging.
Absolutely. I will say with the folks that I'm working with, they are very much about, and I would say it, supporting the customer. And they've made that very clear. And so it is whatever MARSOC would like to have happen, in the sense that the general provides guidance and we just start rowing and working towards what we think may be an acceptable solution.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like the planning process. Don't we have a planning? We have a planning process, don't we?
I think we
That's
do.
nice. That's nice. And the commander's involved in the planning process. That's nice.
Yes.
Yeah. One gripe that I will put here publicly for everybody is if you are not doing a planning process, if you're not participating like in a planning process, you are not doing an operational planning team.
That's fair.
You're doing a working group or something else, or like a bunch of guys sitting around talking, right? Like
Mhm.
I hate it when people use OPT as like just a general term for a meeting. Gripe of mine. None of my coworkers listen to this, right? So I should be fine. All right. So those are the updates. Insert Scott's update on him being selected for battalion command here somewhere in the exciting things of the reserve
Yay,
world.
Scott.
Yeah. Yes, overtures. We'll play those. Okay. So what we're going to talk about a little bit in this episode is professional military education and just as 0402s, how, I guess, what we experienced, walking through, I'll skip, obviously like these are professional military education, but like OCS, TBS, yeah, we all did that. We all did MOS school. Like we can, so long ago, but for some people it isn't that long ago, but for, I've suppressed all the bad memories, I guess, of that. But somebody posted a meme the other day about their sergeant instructors, like supporting them and all this stuff at OCS. And I was just remembering back to my SUI 2 days and just the misery that was. Somebody really
experience.
I had a miserable experience. Yeah. If somebody wants to go into the detail on that, buy me a beer and I'll tell you the tales of woe. Interesting times. Oh, what was the name of the colonel? It was Colonel Mancini was his name.
Yes.
Got to meet him personally. All right, let's keep going. Yeah, so professional military education.
I wouldn't mind glossing over it and not necessarily talk about EWS, but CCLEB in general, so people understand that there are the other schools.
Oh yeah.
And the importance of going to a sister school.
Okay, good. Yeah, because you went to Army Land?
Yes.
Okay, good. We should talk about that.
You went to Army Land?
You like that? Let's use that as a soundbite. I'm like, multicam. Seriously, like the RFI just went through my mind of like, did Jess have to wear multicam to school? And it's like, no, because we don't do that. Well, although right now with the cami shortage,
somebody might think that. I don't know.
I mean, with the cami shortage right now, it kind of just makes sense. Maybe we need to all be wearing the same uniforms. You want to know what I actually think? As a low decision, I think about this. I'm like, do you want to know where all those uniforms are? They're probably locked in a box somewhere in another country. Like I would have totally bought up everybody's uniforms. Oh, it's hilarious. Like all this stuff happening. Some dude in, name one of 3 countries is like, this is going to be hilarious. Let's just buy all of them and just put them in this ISO container.
And not tell anybody.
Just put it on a boat and just put it on. It's just constantly rotating the world. You can fit a lot of 40-foot containers on a cargo boat.
Yes, you can.
Cargo ship on a cargo ship. People get upset. I call it a boat. All right. So we're going to talk about professional military education. We're going to talk a little bit about the path. Yeah, we're going to skip over OCS, TBS, MOS school, like those basic entry level stuff. But we'll talk a little bit about the Commandant's Career Level Education Board. We'll gloss a little bit over Expeditionary Warfare School and Command and Staff. I have done non-res EWS and Command and Staff, which means I probably will not progress past 05.
That's not true at all. Stop it.
I think if you would, okay. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that experiment plays out. But I had that experience of going through non-res for both of those. So different perspectives there. And then we'll jump in and talk very briefly about JPME 2, which I had an opportunity to go through because of the joint staff. I think not a lot of people know about it or like what the heck it is. So like I'll spend hopefully 5 minutes just talking through what that is. And then we'll go through a couple other education programs. So what's available in terms of courses from, you have a few from MARSOC that you're going to talk about, right?
So my big thing with discussing PME is after talking to not just logisticians at that more junior officer level, but just overall, how many people don't understand the opportunities that are out there, even though they come out on a MART admin every year? Actually, while I was doing research coming into this podcast, I realized that in the calling message, it doesn't put in there the USAID fellowship. It doesn't put in the FedEx fellowship. What it does is it just says, hey, opportunities. And when you get the preference list, you need to put them in there. So instead, I went to the results boards and pulled those so you could see what exactly is available. But I think if people had a better understanding of what was out there, they might, I don't want to say take it more seriously, but they would probably have a better, I guess, a greater interest in looking at what those are, what they can do for them.
100%.
Yeah.
Man, you're doing research for these podcasts. Good work. How much are we paying you? Sheesh Louise. Okay, good. Yeah. All right. Let's jump right into this.
All right. Okay.
So first thing we'll talk through is let's just talk about EWS. We can just talk about the non-res. You did. Okay. So I did non-res EWS and I had the experience of, I started it as lieutenant. Quick tale of woe. I started it, did the first year, like a motivated lieutenant, and then they changed the curriculum after my first year. And then I went on deployment, was gone for 7 months, came back, and they looked at me and said, you mean you didn't do EWS while you were on deployment? Well, that 6-month grace period is over. You need to restart all of your EWS. And so like a good first lieutenant, I was like, F you, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not doing EWS until I have to. Huge mistake. I ended up getting tagged on CCLEB, which we'll talk a little bit about CCLEB here in a second. I got tagged on CCLEB, got sent to Naval Postgraduate School, and assumed like, oh, I'll just do it while I'm there, which I did, but like not realizing that I actually had a class load and like all the other stuff that I should have been doing. I was like, I'm in a school environment. I'll do school stuff there. Like, it'll totally be fun. Whew. Yeah, that was rough. So I did it. You know, I had good instructors. Like, I had an opportunity to work with awesome, you know, very professional other Marine officers like there at MPS who were all like struggling through this together. So it was a good experience. But I finished EWS 1 month before the majors board. Had to write a letter, had to like get all the stuff in, like to say like I finished. Here's my proof, you know. So if anybody needs tips on making sure that stuff gets done, the paperwork gets passed in, let me know. I know that process now. So that was my life with EWS. EWS was, you know, again, it's like a refresher. It's a cross-leveling across the Marine Corps, which is nice. Not every other service does that. But it really cemented a lot of what I learned about the Marine Corps planning process. It helped me contextualize a lot of what I had done as a lieutenant. Brought it in now as a captain, like with a little bit of experience trying to put all that stuff together. So yeah, that was a quick overview of my EWS experience. You did something a little different?
No, I went to the Combined Logistics Captain's Career Course, so it's the Army's version. Yeah. I did do non-res EWS as well, though, because as soon as I found out I was I got selected, I did it because I didn't want to be caught, you know, like you with my pants down and like, oh God, I need to get this done. Just in case I didn't get picked up on CCLEB. So I still recommend that you do that. Might be kind of a pain in the butt, but recommend that you do that. At least when I was going through the CCLEB process, I did reach out to my monitor and I was like, hey, the one I want to do is definitely CLCCC. And he's like, that's great because we don't actually have a lot of people asked to go. He's like, why are you asking to go? Can I just ask? And I said, well, first of all, it's only 5 months. So that may or may not have factored in my calculus as well. I'm just not a big Chuck's fan.
So you don't have to wear Chucks every day?
No, I wore camis because I was at the Army's school.
Nice.
What I will say is for people that are like, oh, why would I want to go to a sister school when I need to go to my school? What I do recommend is it gives you an opportunity to appreciate what they have to offer.
Yeah.
I would say especially the Army as a logistician, because if you think about it, anytime we go into any kind of ground combat operations, who is responsible for providing theater logistics, operational level logistics? It's the TSCs. And so if you can start plugging yourself into those networks as a young captain, it is going to reap you huge benefits when you get out into the fleet as a major, lieutenant colonel, and you're like, hey, I remember you. We were at school together. I actually still maintain contact with a lot of those people. And when was that? I did that in 2014. So it's just a great opportunity. Well, they do call them service appreciation tours or Marine Corps appreciation tours. And there's a little bit of jest in that, but at the same time, there's very much like, oh God, I need to get back to the Marines. Again, though, what it really does is it gives you an appreciation for what they do.
Yeah.
I think it's also an opportunity for the Marine Corps to go to those schools. And I'm not being boisterous. We all know that for the most part, when a Marine shows up, they expect a leader. That's exactly what happens at these schools as well. So they do look at you to kind of provide that model on, I hate to say it, but even how to brief. Me and my other fellow Marines that were at the school, all the instructors brought the new instructors to our briefs because they're like, this is what a brief is supposed to sound like. And it's because we are afforded opportunities at a much junior level to be able to do that, because there's so many people in the Army, they don't get those same opportunities. So it's no fault of their own. And absolutely, some of them were brilliant. But it just goes to show the amount of responsibility you are given as a lieutenant pays dividends. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it pays dividends as you move up in the ranks against your peers across the other services. And what was also fascinating is in the Army, they will have everybody from, as they call them, first lieutenant promotables to senior captains. And I didn't know this, but 70% of the Army's logistics is actually in the reserves. So a lot of the people I was working with were reservists, had no deployment operational experience, but getting to see how their civilian experience affected the way that they did their jobs in the Army was fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a brief taste of, again, just because of the jointery. And I was in concept, so I worked a lot with Army TRADOC and Army Futures Command, and it was always great to just cross-pollinate, talk about, hey, how do you guys handle this problem? How do you guys do X, Y, and Z? And, even with limited contact with those soldiers, like now coming out here to Hawaii where, Fort Shafter is right down the road, 25th ID, ATSC, these units that do, theater sustainment, they are the ones that support watercraft and move everything from here across the ocean. Like it's been awesome having just a little bit of knowledge, and I don't have that much, as to how that stuff works. Army support to other services is a huge thing that like nobody seems to take advantage of. And we saw a little bit of it in OEF and OIF. We saw slices of it. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of it here in the Pacific as we really get comfortable with how all these different pieces cobble together. And, back to what I was saying about the Littoral Regiment, trying to make sure that we are plugged into the joint logistics enterprise and not just coming up with our own solutions and solving our own problems all the time. There are people here that want to help and want to get involved in helping us solve our problems. Yeah, that's awesome. There is a lot of different perspectives on the schools you go to and whether it's good or bad for your career specifically. Like, I feel like I talk to a lot of lieutenants who are very concerned about, how is this going to affect my career progression? Like, if I want to go CCLEB and I want to go to MPS and get a master's degree, like, well, I'm not going to be able to get promoted. And, you know, that came up in our Manpower Roadshow. Like, everybody was asking about that. Like, do I ask to do a joint tour because it's going to affect my promotion? Nobody knows. Like, I mean, you can look at the data and like that'll give you a piece of the picture, but like it's unfortunately you can't predict like who's going to get promoted and who's not going to get promoted, right? Like, what do you
So
think?
it's funny you mentioned that. One of my mentors, he has spent more time on joint staffs now than he actually has in the Marine Corps. He is about to take command as an 06. So it clearly has not hurt him. But he and I had an opportunity to sit down and talk about that because especially as an 0505, I'm going to have more of an opportunity to work with joint partners, not necessarily be on a joint staff, but further on down the road, if I wanted to do a second tour as an 0505, I would have that opportunity to go on a joint staff. And I told him my concerns, and it was those concerns exactly. Hey, I've heard it hurts you, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, that's a myth. And I don't know why that's a myth that we continue to perpetuate in the Marine Corps because it is hurting us. We cannot do this alone. This same mentor, he gives an excellent brief on his personal experiences. And one of them is he was in a theater on a joint staff and they needed a unit to do something. And the Army general at the time, even though there was a Marine unit in theater ready to go, still went to an Army general that he knew back in the States and asked for one of his units. And he said, sir, what are you doing? I have guys right here ready to go. He goes, I don't know any of your generals. I do not. So if I don't know them, it's not that I don't trust them, but I don't trust them. I know if I reach out to this guy, because we both went to West Point together, I'm going to get what I want when I want. We do a terrible job of integrating ourselves in the joint world. And if there is anything I would recommend, it is take any opportunity that you can get to see yourself inside that environment. Because then when it also comes to it, when you get further on in your career, and you're probably seeing it at the MLR, being able to tie concept to campaigning to funding, that is where the money is.
Ooh, funding.
Yeah, but you have to be able to speak that language, and being on a joint staff gives you that opportunity. You know why the Air Force is so good at it? Because they send people on joint staffs and they can talk both languages. They can talk NCR congressional and they can come back and talk their doctrine.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, definitely. I've seen that. Funding streams. Yeah, I will not get into that right now. Especially since it's October 13th. We're just like crossing out of this fiscal year closeout and all the pain. I don't know how many hours of my life was lost on that as a regimental 4 trying to figure out fiscal stuff. I've got a great suppo, but like lots of time trying to figure out where all the money's going. What other, so for CCLEB, I know for me, when I got selected for CCLEB, I was, again, not a good logistics officer, not a good officer. I got selected for CCLEB mostly because I had done 2 back-to-back fleet tours, and I remember the monitor telling me like, yeah, you're going to school. Like, you don't have a choice, especially because of your educational background. You took a math class, like you're definitely going. And they gave me my options for CCLEB. Like, I really didn't take it seriously. Like, I was like, I guess I want to go get a master's degree. I remember getting selected to go specifically to MPS and like really struggling with, okay, am I going to get out? Like, I really don't want to go back. They originally assigned me to electrical engineering. For those in the engineering world, there's like, they're mechanical engineers, they're civil engineers, and electrical engineers. And electrical engineers are like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. Like, they're like the really smart ones, okay? Their minds work different. They see the world in imaginary numbers and electricity and like it's just a different way of looking at the world. You know, as a mechie, I spent a year doing electrical circuits, and I still like could not sit here and explain to you electrical theory and imaginary numbers and all that. So anyway, they threatened me with that and told me like I was going to go do that. And I did not think I could do that for, I think it was an 18-month program. I don't know if I can do it. yeah, I think I talked in another episode about ops research and like how I got fooled into that. That's a whole other story. I did not look closely enough at all the other options for CCLEB that I could have done. In the end, I ended up getting convinced by my wife as we sat there and built our like decision matrix, right? Of like master's degrees, they cost a lot of money. So even if I got out of the Marine Corps, like I would still probably need to go get an MBA or something else. So it just kind of makes sense. Like maybe we try and see how the master's degree goes and go down that path. I'm happy I did, really happy I did. MPS is a great experience and I could talk anybody's ear off of that. Especially the exchange programs going to like Singapore. I mean, that was unreal. A really cool experience. But since you did research, I'm very interested to hear what you found for like, okay, other than going to MPS, what else is there? Getting selected for Commandant's Career Level Education Board. What else could we do?
So there's the other like service specific schools. So you've got the Maneuver Captain's Career Course for the Army. So the reason why the Air Force is not on there is, believe it or not, they only send their captains to a 4-week course. 4-week, not for a month. And then they send them right back out. So that is the reason why we do not do a sister service exchange with the Air Force for the captains, which I only know because then I did Air Force Command and Staff College, which is on the same campus.
Wow.
So yeah, which I found fascinating. I was like, what do you mean your captains only come to a 4-week course? And they're like, yeah, we show up for 4 weeks, then we go back to our units. We're TAD. And I'm like, fascinating. Okay.
That's awesome.
The other ones that I am aware of are the Congressional Fellowships.
Yeah.
I don't know too much about them.
Yeah.
But honestly, if there's something that interests you, first of all, just read the message, honestly, and then reach out to people you may know that have done those programs as well, so they can just give you the straight skinny on what it is. So when we do transition to CPIB, one of the ones that I was interested in was the USAID Fellowship. I had no idea what it was. I found somebody who knew. She told me about it. And I was like, that is exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, and that is, I'll plug right here our group, right? So we've got Facebook, got Teams, we've got Discord. Discord's getting up there. I think we broke 80 last week.
Yes.
Yeah, that I'm not going to name him, but the airman from Massachusetts that like ruined Discord for everybody. Yeah, people are starting to get over it. Yeah. So if depending on what your educational background is, if you took a math class at some point in your career, probably not doing anything fun that has to do with people, you're going to go take more math classes. Just my perspective.
Oh, actually, a plug for masters that I was not aware of until my husband started pursuing his this past year is officers can use tuition assistance. I think for the longest time, I was under the assumption that tuition assistance was not available to us. It is for masters, and the only payback you have is once you complete the degree is 2 years.
Mm.
So if you're already a captain, maybe at that, 6-year mark, hell, you might as well just do that. You could get your master's, you can complete it in a year, and then you're giving 2 years back that you were already giving back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Get the master's done. It's easier to just get it done early.
And you're not paying for it.
Yeah, especially when you're not paying for it. That's nice.
Yeah.
All right. So after CCLEB, we talked about a few options there. If you did CCLEB and you did some other random secure program that you want to talk about, hit us up. Or start a thread on one of our groups, one of our bar fronts, and talk it through and get that information out there. This is for all 0402s to be able to hear the different options, and the more we can share that information, the more diverse our community becomes. So after that level of PME, we move on to CPIB, which then feeds into like command and staff and all that. So, again, not exciting. I did command and staff, non-res. I started it. I did not start it at MPS, even though I probably should have. Just didn't want to do it. It was like I was writing a thesis. I was doing all this other stuff. I was like, I don't want to do it. So I ended up starting it once I got to the joint staff. Did it in Virginia. I was able to go to National Defense University in in Norfolk and do it in person for a little while, and then coronavirus hit, and then we all switched to Teams and online forums. So I did non-res. Command and staff, to me, very similar to Expeditionary Warfare School non-res. It was, unfortunately, like, my experience was that the scenarios were very CENTCOM-y. I think that they were in the process of trying to update a lot of their stuff to try and get out of the Middle East. They had a couple interesting interludes into other parts of the world, to include AFRICOM, which was mildly interesting. Usually for us as logisticians, they stick you into the S4 billets or the operational. For me, they put me in OPT lead for a little while for a couple of the sessions, which was interesting, and it was fun to do that. Depending on what your definition of fun is, I found it fun to build the team and build those plans. So it was cool to do that. Not a ton to talk about on command and staff. I mean, it was, again, another cross-leveling opportunity. It was great to meet a bunch of majors, a couple captains that were in that geographic region with me, build some connections there. But did you do non-res command and staff and then you went to the Air Force?
I always have done the non-res, in the fact that I may have not been picked up for the boards themselves for resident school. So as soon as I knew that I was in zone selected, I was going ahead and starting that non-res program because, again, no offense, never wanted to be caught with my pants down, like rushing to the finish line for boards. Well, because I've seen that happen to so many people.
Yep.
And some of them have the hubris of, oh, well, I know I'm going to get resident school. And I'm like, you do? Okay, that's impressive. That is a method. And then there's other folks who are like, I'll just kind of let it happen as it happens. And I'm like, I like to have a little bit of control over where my life is going. Not a lot. I'm definitely more of a fly by the seat of my pants person, which is funny now that I'm a planner. But yeah.
So we were talking about CPIB. We were talking about you being really smart and doing all the stuff ahead of time, which was good. That's a good example for our Marines. And then you did non-res. You did non-res command and staff, and then you signed up for Air Force, or you got selected on CPIB?
So
how'd that work?
So what's crazy is, actually, if you look at the MAR admin for my year, I'm not on the list. And it's because I was an alternate, which I was like, okay, cool. Alternate sounds great. And then the monitor gives me a call in December, and we all know what that normally means because it's moving season, and what billets do they fill first? Overseas. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. Japan it is, because I was due to move. And he was like, actually, would you like to go to Air Force Command Staff College? You were the alternate. So fascinating process, by the way. And I didn't know this is how it worked until he explained it to me. So sorry out there, monitors, if I'm giving away all the secret juice. But basically, for the schools, they will do votes over MOS. So according to him, I was the 0402 that got the second most votes to be able to go to this school. The reason why I got pulled up was because the 0402 that was originally selected decided to retire. So by him backing out of the race, they went to who had the most votes. So I was the rinker on the bench, like, ready to go, coach, put me in. And they're like, she might do. She might do.
Who's voting? Is it monitors?
I don't think it's the monitors. It's the board members for CPIB. And so I was like, by looking at your record and everything else, because those were my questions. I was like,
who are my friends in high places?
Juju?
Who are these friends I have that are voting for me? That's cool.
Well, yeah, I was like, man, I must have had some friends on the board.
That's awesome. It's good.
In all seriousness, I honestly, at the time, a billet that I've always wanted was down in BIC, so Blount Island Command.
Yeah, wow.
Always wanted to go.
Wow.
Always wanted to go down there. I love Florida, for starters. B, it's away from the flagpole, so it's kind of nice. And C, you're getting to see that operational level, I would argue, logistics, which we don't really dabble a lot in the Marine Corps because of the NPF stuff.
Yeah.
So but the big thing is I love Florida. I'm very much a location person, not necessarily a billet person, because if I live or if I love where I live. If I don't like my job, that's okay.
But you love your job so much. You love it.
Actually, like I said, I am blessed. I have an amazing staff that I work with, and that's not just because this is being recorded. I do say that every day, because they're definitely not going to listen to this. But so I had to decide between that and Air Force Command and Staff, and of course, back of my mind's going, you can't turn down school. They're offering it to you. So I said, sure, go ahead and sign me up. I said, by the way, where is it? And he goes, Montgomery. And I'm like, Alabama. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I don't think I'd have any other reason to visit Montgomery, Alabama. So here we go.
Yeah, nice.
Come to find out, that's where the Wright brothers started their air school and airfield after they did all their testing up here in North Carolina. So that is why it's down there.
Cool.
And all their schools are down there. So everything from OTS, their captain's course, Air War College, and Air Command and Staff, all on the same campus, kind of like what we do up at Quantico.
Cool.
So that is another opportunity I would highly recommend. I get it. We all have our judgments on the Air Force. And yes, some of them were proved valid. But what I will say is much like Marine Corps Command and Staff, they have specialties, if you will, that you can apply to, like the Grace Scholars with Command and Staff. And this is where another mentor comes into play. She knew that I got Air Command Staff, and she was like, call me. So I call her, and she's like, I don't care what you do, you're going to apply to the JADS program. I'm like, okay, what's JADS? It stands for Joint All-Domain Strategist. They have a couple other programs as well. So they've got Shrevers, which is space-based. They will actually be having their own school here shortly, though, because they are their own branch now. So I don't know if that'll be available in the future. But instead, you could probably go to their school, which I do recommend. I had a classmate of mine who was a Marine. He did the Shrevers program. He said it was fascinating. I'm like, I can only imagine.
Is he in the Space Force now?
Nope. But I do have a girlfriend that did inter-service transfer to the Space Force, and she loves it. So there is that opportunity out there for you too.
Yeah, yes, I've met a couple of people from the Space Force, and they seem to all love it. So,
well, so what's fascinating about that as well is a lot of the, I would say, organizational level folks at Space Force have done a lot to reach out to the Marine Corps because they're a branch or department of the Air Force. They are trying to figure out how the Marine Corps has done as well as it has as a department of the Navy. So, funding and personnel and all those .MLPF things that we don't really think about because we've been in existence for so long. The Space Force is working through all that. So they're like, what is it you say you do here?
They better start working on their propaganda machine. Yeah.
Highly recommend if you have the opportunity to go to Air Force Command Staff College, go. I've told everybody that, and I get mixed reactions. I either get really or really. Go. I highly recommend it. And even if it is in Alabama, you would have no other reason to go. It's a great state. Yeah. And
wow, you just totally won over our Alabama crowd, just so you know. Totally won over. I know.
Well, it's true. Montgomery is cool, and it's only an hour from Birmingham. And if you are a fan of college football, what I did not know is the SEC headquarters is in Birmingham.
Birmingham. Sports reference, good. I know that St. Simeon's Orthodox Church is in Birmingham.
There you go.
There you go. All right. Cool. So you did non-res command and staff, and you did Air Force Command and Staff College. That's what they call it.
Yep.
Okay.
Command and Staff College. Yeah.
Yeah. I do. I've worked same thing. Like I've worked with a lot of Air Force professionals, and I love how professional they are in their specialties. We went and did an airfield survey in Indonesia, and we brought 3 Marines with us to do the airfield survey, and the equivalent Air Force team that they brought was like 22 people because they specialized in all these very specific areas, and they wanted to make sure they had the right people there. And it was refreshing because they backed up a lot of what we had and provided a depth that we were not capable of doing, which is great.
Well,
Again, don't reinvent the wheel. The other services can also help us.
also, I would argue because of our size, that's why we have not been able to invest as we would probably like to in being joint.
Yeah.
Because you look at the Air Force, they have the capacity to send their officers enlisted to joint staffs because they have so many.
Yeah.
And the specialty thing helps as well.
Yeah, definitely. So that kind of gives a kind of an overview on, I guess, EWS and then intermediate PME.
Traditional.
Traditional
the
side.
only other pitches I would give to are for the CPIB for fellowships. There are 3 in particular, I think, for Lagos that are incredibly important. The USAID. So basically, you were the military liaison to USAID. I'd mentioned I had a mentor who did it. And I don't know if people remember the Yazidi situation back in the mid 2000s in Iraq. So when ISIS first came to be, the Yazidis are a small sect that were a population in Iraq. They were forced to the top of a hill, and they probably would have starved and died. But one of the things that our government was able to do through USAID was drop supplies to them. Another one is the FedEx Fellowship. Highly recommend. I do know, and I'm going to go ahead and call him out, Brandon Mokris, Lieutenant Colonel Mokris. He's one of the MWSS COs right now. He actually did that fellowship, highly recommends it. And obviously, if you can go to a corporation that's been around since the 80s and has really defined process improvement, if you will, you look at that company, it's just absolutely fascinating, the amount of tonnage and throughput that they can manage throughout the globe. I think that's a great model that I wish in the military we could model. And then the last one is the Penn State Logistics Master. Don't forget about that one either. I actually have a friend there right now. I'll go ahead and call him out, Sean O'Rourke. So I'm sure if you were to hit up these folks, just go ahead and make sure you ding me out. That's fine. Major Pastor Jessica. And let them know, hey, I heard on a podcast that you guys did this thing. Can you tell me about it? And I have no doubt they will be more than happy to entertain any questions that you have when it comes to that stuff. Because if anything that I have learned throughout my time in the military, it's not about relationships. It's all about relationships.
Yeah, 100%. And again, like, I'm sure that there's other stuff out there that people can, again, post on our Facebook group, post in the team site, on Discord, whatever, and like bring other opportunities forward so that other people can read about it. Yeah, it's in the MAR admin. Sometimes that stuff gets buried and people don't see it. If you experience something or did something that has contributed to your career or life experience or anything, like, please come share it and let us know. Help other people experience the same stuff. Yeah, so, okay, we'll move a little bit into, I'm just going to quickly, like, hopefully 5 minutes or less, just gloss over. I'm just going to gloss over real quick, Joint Professional Military Education 2, just because I went through it because of my time on the Joint staff. There are opportunities for other folks to go through it. Usually it's field grade officers. It's usually senior field grades, people from the different geographic combatant commands and functional combatant commands. I've seen them in these courses as well. So, okay, so JPME 2 is run at National Defense University in Norfolk, Virginia. It's a resident course. It's 10 weeks long.
Actually, I just applied to get to JPME too. So they have a blended virtual course now too.
Do they?
Yep.
Does a mobile team come to you?
No. So you do,
Wow.
it's a lot like EWS blended or command staff blended. You do 2 segments of face-to-face time of like 2 weeks. And then there's a period in between. It's all virtual.
Oh, wow.
So but instead of weeks, this is like 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I support that. And it's good to get more people out there and involved in this. I mean, again, because especially with your background in the joint world of like seeing this expanded view of what the joint force can really do when the Megazord is put together. Reference early 90s. Voltron, I think, is another reference for people who are a little bit older. They could put that together. Anyway, all right. Captain Planet, all the different rings. I'm going to stop with the reference. Okay.
No, that's awesome.
JPME 2. Yeah. So JPME 2, I went through JPME 2 at the end of my time on the Joint Staff, and that was not the way to do it. If you can do it en route to the Joint Staff or to a combatant command, that is definitely the time to do it, because it sets you up to understand what the heck you're doing in that job, or how your piece of the pie fits into everything else in the joint world. I went through it like in the last couple months of my time on the Joint Staff, and I really wished that I had had that education ahead of time, because I would have seen, you know, how to influence or help certain groups who are making decisions that fed other groups. And when you look at the big spaghetti charts of how everything works in the Pentagon and in the Joint Staff, and in the DoD in general, like going through that course helps you understand all the different pieces of that. As with most courses, like depending on the quality of the instructors, like you'll get more insider knowledge, et cetera, from their experiences. But I was really lucky, had great instructors. For those that have been through JPME 2 resident, I was in Lucky 13, Seminar 13. I know there's a couple alums out there that went through that. Great instructors. It was good. But the non-res stuff and like what's available, that's really good. I'm glad you're doing that, and like I hope you get selected for it.
Me too, honestly. So this is the second fiscal year that they are trying out the virtual thing. Last year was the first year that they were trying to, and there's just such a limited amount of seats.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm really glad they are trying to do it virtually. And again, I think that also goes into the Marine Corps' efforts of trying to make us more joint and dispelling that fallacy, that or myth that it hurts you.
Yeah. And I would encourage some like tips and tricks there on JPME. Like if you are in the Norfolk area and like you show up on the first day of the course as an alternate, they will find space for you, unless like, you know, an excessive amount of people show up. But we had at least 3 or 4 people show up as standbys, and they found classrooms for them and put them into the course. Definitely worth it. And the connections, I mean, you meet so many people there across the joint force, you know, it was definitely worth it. It was a great experience.
When you went through, Kevin, did they have international officers?
Yes. Another special superpower. There's a Filipino graduate that went through the course with me that, you know, I've kept in touch with. And especially with the amount of work that we're doing in the Pacific, it's great to get his perspectives on things, especially as a JPME 2 trained soldier. Like he understands at least like, you know, a slice of how the joint world or the DoD works, US DoD. So yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah.
I'll do one quick plug for like, if you want to be a planner, the schools that you can go to. So a lot of people may or may not know that there's technically 4 schools you can go to become a planner. You have SAW, that's the Marine Corps. You have SAASS, which is the Air Force. SAMS, which is the Army, and then MAWS, which is the Navy. So what's unique about MAWS, however, and it's kind of a little bit of a downside in the fact that you technically would not receive the 0505 MOS. But what's unique is you go to the Naval Command Staff College, and right after that, almost like as a summer program, you execute MAWS. But while you were at Naval Command and Staff, they remove you out of the general population, if you will, and you do your own track. So it is like you're at planner school for an entire year, but they truncate it by combining the 2 together for the whole year. And then you do an additional, I think, 6 to 10 weeks on the backside to do the actual planner thing. And what's unique about that course in particular is they will give you a problem set from a current O plan. And that is what you will work as your final project. And then you will brief it to that combatant command staff. So for anybody that has heard rumors or whatever about MAWS, it's a great program. Personally, for me, when I did apply, I did only apply to SAW, and it's not because it was Marine Corps, because as you all know, I'm a huge advocate of joint. For me, I saw SAASS as too philosophical, because one of the things that they do not do is they don't do a lot of wargaming. So that I would say that's one of the core tenets of why you become a planner, is to be able to work people through the process, whether that's MCPP, MDMP, JPP, whatever you're doing. They don't do a lot of that there. And that's nothing bad. That's just the way that the Air Force has decided to take their curriculum. For SAMs, in my opinion, it's very prescriptive. And so they are Jedis when it comes to the planning process. If you want to know doctrine, theory, planning process, ops terms and graphics, they are your dudes. They will know every tactical task out there possible. I think, in my opinion, and not because I went to the school, but SAW is a good combination. Obviously, not only does history repeat itself, we can take those lessons we've used in the past and apply them forward, as I'm sure you are looking at right now, being at the MLR. World War II comes to mind. I don't know. And then another line of effort that we do is we look at warfighting capabilities in the future. And then finally, we look at, theory. And then finally, what we do look at is the actual process. So going through in MCPP and JPP, both comparing the two. So that is what I would offer out there for those 4 schools, if you are interested in applying. I look at it this way too. If you have any interest in that type of stuff, apply. The worst that'll happen is no, you don't get in. What I can say for SAW, because I went there, is if you do apply, you will be interviewed. They do not cull people from the stack from the application process. Every single individual that applies is interviewed.
Good perspective. I'll do a quick plug, just since we're in the PME vein. We'll do a whole episode on AXLOC. So I'm going to put a disclaimer at the beginning of this. It says, like, if you're looking for AXLOC perspectives, don't ask Jess and I. We'll give you our perspectives. I haven't been through the new course yet. I know you went through IMLOC. If you'd like to talk a little bit about that, definitely jump in. I think that, I know a lot of 0402s who went through IMLOC, and I've heard that AXLOC is completely different, and it looks at the problem in a different perspective, which is great. I'm excited about it. Hopefully I have the opportunity to go at some point. But I'll talk real quick about WTI, just because it's something that nobody knows anything about, it seems like.
I didn't know that I could become WTI qualified.
Yeah, no, and I only ended up, again, I fell into it by accident because I went to an MWSS, a Marine Wing Support Squadron. I do want to do a whole episode on aviation ground support, which is what an MWSS does. I need to get some more current WTIs in. I've looked at they call it reblack, slideshows, and they kind of gloss over what the updates are for the MWSS community. But we really need to get a newer trained WTI in to do an episode on it and hear what all the updates are, because the MWSS has been moved all over the place. It's changed its structure. I know that the core mission of the MWSS hasn't changed. A lot of it is focused around forward arming and refuel points. But how it's employed and how it's put together went through a little bit of a shock with the MLR being stood up, and they tried ripping fueling assets away from the wing and putting it into the MLR, and then that didn't work out. So the structure has changed. Now there's no longer a forward arming and refuel point battery. There used to be a FARP battery within the MLR. It's not there anymore, which, is a little sad for me. I'm sorry. It's one of the reasons I was excited about coming to the MLR, is bringing, my division experience and my wing experience, being like, man, we could just put this all together.
Powers combined.
Yeah, well, especially, my 3510 and I pull out our lawn chairs and sit there and stare at our 2 MKR-18 LVSRs with the flat rack refueling capability, FRCs on the backs of them, and sip our beers and are sad because these trucks are going away because we don't rate them anymore. The MLR as a whole does not rate any LVSRs. Separate topic that we could talk to. Yeah, interesting. Ask me later how many MTVRs the LLB has. We'll get into that some other point. So anyway, WTI. WTI is a six-week course, happens at Yuma, Arizona. If you are some kind of wing affiliated in any way, you work for a Marine Wing Headquarters Squadron, you work for a Marine Wing Support Squadron, you're at the MAG, you can lobby to go to this course. There's a limited number of seats for it, but they're always happy to have 0402s, 1302s going to the course. It's a great cross-pollination with the 1390s, bulk fuel officers, and the 7002s, airfield services officers, to get an understanding of all the different pieces of the wing. The wing is its own beast, and a lot of people in the Marine Corps are just unfamiliar with all of the missions and requirements of what the wing is responsible for. C3, all of our DASC Marines, our air traffic controller Marines, WTI gives you a look, a brief look, but a thorough look into what all of those different communities do and how it all fits together. It is, yes. I'm like, look, I'm going through all the acronyms in my head, trying to think, okay, do I want to talk about that? Do I want to talk about this before I say an acronym, but I don't actually know what the acronym stands for because I've just data dumped it. But the TAOC, Tactical Air Operations Center, or the TACC, the TAC, Tactical Air Command Center. So all these different pieces, you start to understand how all that fits together and how it supports the rest of the MAGTAF. It's very helpful. But it is an MOS producing school now. It used to not be. 7077 is what that is. So, mirrors the 0477. A lot of the training similar, right? You're going through training plans, understanding. It's mostly aimed at being an operations officer in a Marine Wing Support Squadron or some kind of wing affiliated unit. What they don't talk a ton about is the Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron, so the MAWS. MAWS are very blue side, right? You could obviously talk more intelligently about this, but from what I can see, that was one of my complaints about the WTI program was we just didn't have enough understanding what the MAWS did or how they plugged into stuff. Yeah, we would have MAWS Marines out at the FARPs, advising us on arming the aircraft and everything, but how all that stuff works, we were always told that, well, that's blue money, don't worry about that. Which now that we're talking about naval integration and trying to understand how to plug into the Navy, probably is more important, and we should stop saying that. I'm sure
we always would say in the MALs, if it touched an aircraft, make sure that was understood, because then you could claim blue dollars.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's how I got away with my budget being fairly substantial, because I don't think I touched my green dollars unless I absolutely had to.
Yeah.
Toilet paper somehow touched that aircraft.
I'm trying to picture how that happened. But okay, yeah. I'll hit the I believe button. There's that GIF. I'll allow it. Where's my sombrero? All right. I think that runs through all the stuff that we had except for MARSOC.
Yep. So new course that's going on at MARSOC, and it is literally called the MARSOC Logistics course. What it primarily is trying to achieve is just opening the aperture for logisticians at that AXLOC level. So as we've talked about joint, as we've talked about interagency, governmental, non-governmental, that is what this program is going to do. It is only 5 days long. It is on Stone Bay. If you go to the MCLOG website, they do actually have it on there. They have the calling message and how to apply. If you want, though, feel free to reach out to me. And actually, I will probably put on Discord the message for the course that's going to go here shortly. I believe applications are due on the 1st of November. So I'll get that out there really quick. Highly recommend it, though. Again, it's only 5 days. And you're going to be surrounded with folks from across the community, because it's not only open to conventional Marine Corps, it's also open to our guys that we are calling the SOCs, and those are the enablers at MARSOC, which is kind of a dirty word there, but we're working through it. And one of the veins that we've worked towards is logistics. So if you're interested in coming to MARSOC as an enlisted or officer as well, please feel free to reach out to me. I will definitely either be able to answer your questions or put you to the right point of contact.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in courses like that. And I do have a whole list of other courses as I've progressed in this billet that I'm in, I've had to do research on how to educate my staff and all the other O402s that are in the regiment on how to plug into Joint Logistics Enterprise, the JLEN, right? Or the Naval, specifically the Navy Logistics Enterprise. One of the, I guess, claim to fame, I need to find the right word, it's 12:30, blanking. One of the things that the MLR is charged with is integrating into the Navy and trying to understand how we support the Joint Force. Where do we find the plug-in? How do we get the information that we have, things that we are sensing, making sense of, and get that out to the rest of the Joint Force? To do that, we have to do this professional military education and go to the courses where the rest of the Joint Force is actually talking about how their logistics works, how everything gets plugged in. So that's another thing I'll add to our list. I'll probably put it on Teams or Discord of like, here's all the courses that I'm researching, trying to get my officers to try and get them more plugged into the joint world. And hopefully it makes a difference. Let you know in 10 years how that goes.